Friday, the 3rd of August, 1990. Weather temperatures across the country have hit a record high, the hottest since 1911. People throughout the UK bask in the sunshine, hoping for it to carry on into the weeks ahead. All seems bright and well as the working week comes to an end, but in Middleton St George, England, today will be remembered for many as one of the darkest in the town's history, sparking one of the largest and most expensive UK manhunts ever. This is the 30-year-old unsolved murder of Ann Heron, the beauty in the bikini. Ann Heron, a mother of 3 children, originally from the Isle of Bute in Scotland, met her husband Peter Heron whilst he was on a golfing holiday on the island in 1984. Both were already married at the time and began having an affair when Ann travelled down to Darlington to visit a friend, the town where Peter lived. Soon after, both left their respective spouses and eventually married in 1986, setting up their home in Aeolian House, a large secluded property situated off the busy A67, close to the village of Middleton St George. The Herons were an affluent couple, with Peter working as a company director of a haulage firm in the local area, and Ann working part-time as a care assistant. On the morning of her murder, at 10 AM, whilst Peter was at work as usual, Ann took time off from her job to go to the town centre with a friend to grab something for a party later that evening. At 1 PM, Peter returned home to have lunch with Ann as he usually did, and spoke with her about her day so far. She informed him that she planned to sunbathe in the garden for the rest of the day, before he headed back to work at around 2 PM. At 2:30 PM, Ann's friend, Sheila Eagle, called Ann's home phone to discuss details of the party that they were planning to attend later. About an hour later, at around 3:30, Ann was spotted sunbathing outside the front of her home by a friend who was passing by Aeolian House on a bus. This was, originally and for quite some time, the last known sighting of Ann alive. At around 4:45 PM, a dark blue car is seen on the driveway of Ann's home, whilst a blue van with a distinctive trident symbol is also spotted at the end of the road leading to Aeolian House. Roughly 15 minutes later, at around 5 PM, the passenger of a taxi passing the house noticed a person running unusually fast towards Middleton St George, wearing what appeared to be long trousers, which seemed unusual considering the current heatwave. Approximately 5 minutes later, at 5:05 PM, another taxi driver spotted a blue car speeding down the drive away from the house, almost colliding with another car as it headed towards Darlington. Neither the taxi driver nor the driver of the other car managed to get enough time to take down the registration number, although the driver was described as being early 30s, extremely suntanned or swarthy looking, with dark hair that was longer on the sides than on the top. At 6 PM, Peter returned home from work and found the front door wide open and the sun lounger at the front of the house. The radio was still playing, with a cigarette and lighter sitting next to the lounger and a half-full glass of wine. A book that Ann was reading, The Ghosts of Flight 401, and a pair of shoes were found under a tree around 15 metres from where she was sunbathing. He called out to Ann, but received no answer, so began to make his way into the house. As he reached the living room, Peter found Ann with her throat slit, possibly with a razor or Stanley knife, lying face down in a pool of blood. Her bikini top was still in place, but her bikini bottoms had been removed. Peter immediately called the police upon finding Ann's body. When police arrived at the scene, a thorough examination of the house and the grounds were taken. Nothing appeared to have been stolen from the home, with no signs of any disturbance to the property and no signs of a forced entry. In fact, the house was so undisturbed that apparently her collie dog Heidi was found asleep near Ann's body, seemingly untroubled by the events that had unfolded. No murder weapon was found at the crime scene, and no other signs of a struggle, which led to the conclusion that Ann had been killed due to massive blood loss caused by only one wound on her throat. There was also no signs of any sexual assault or violence, despite the fact that Ann's bikini bottoms had been removed from her body. When the news broke of Ann's murder, the local community was shocked. Ann was well liked amongst locals, described as attractive, well-loved, popular, and with no known enemies. Ann and Peter were described as a happy couple, with no history of problems between them. The months following Ann's murder sparked a huge police investigation, with over 7,000 people spoken to and over 4,000 witness statements taken. Peter soon made a national public appeal for anyone to come forward with information, with the incentive of a £5,000 reward. A few months later, in October, the BBC TV show CrimeWatch provided a reconstruction of the events of Ann's death, using actors to portray a timeline of events on the day of her murder. Detective Superintendent Keith Redman informed viewers that the police were particularly interested in hearing about the blue car spotted on the driveway of Aeolian House, which they believed could have been one of many different makes and models, including a Mazda, Toyota, Cavalier, Astra or a Ford Sierra. They were also keen to understand more about the van on the road leading up to Aeolian House, especially the logo on the side, but little was heard about this after the programme aired. As for the jogger, this was oddly dismissed as a potential suspect by the presenter Nick Ross and by Redman, but they did ask for him to come forward as a possible witness. It wasn't long after the investigation began that Peter was seen as a potential suspect, with public sympathy soon beginning to turn into suspicion. When questioned by the police on his alibi, Peter claimed that he was in his office from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m, by which point he left to attend a meeting with a client in the nearby village of Cleveland Bridge. He then claimed to leave at 4:30 p.m. to return back to the office, and then finally leave the office at 5 p.m. to head home. However, when asked about his journey home, instead of taking the usual route, he instead travelled through Croft and Middleton St George before finally arriving at Aeolian House at 6 p.m. It was later revealed that the reason for this detour was due to the fact that Peter, who had initially met Ann through having an affair, was now having another one with a barmaid at the golf club he was a member of. The barmaid, who was 23 years younger than Peter, worked in nearby Croft, hence the reason for not taking the direct route home. The public opinion of Peter soon changed once this story broke, as the suspicion that Peter was the murderer became incredibly strong, with people passing him in the street openly calling him a murderer in his hometown. Peter was investigated by police but released without charge, although this wouldn't be the last time he would be under the spotlight for the killing. It's at this point where the case initially goes cold, as no witnesses of note come forward to give any crucial evidence as to what could have happened to Ann. There were initially so many unanswered questions. Who was driving the blue car which was seen speeding away from Aeolian House, and why was it on the driveway moments before? Who are the men in the van, and why did they never come forward? Who was the man seen running away from the house, and why would a supposed jogger be running with long trousers on during the hottest day of the year? Why was Ann's bikini bottoms removed, despite the fact that there was no signs of sexual assault? A few minor developments happened in the years ahead, with Peter remarrying 3 years later to a 49-year-old widow named Frida Buddy, who he met in Motherwell when on a business trip in Scotland. Inevitably, this caused further bad press for Peter, with public opinion growing worse, to the point where uninvited press photographers ended up gatecrashing their wedding. A year later, in October 94, letters from someone claiming to be Ann's killer were sent to Peter, the press and the police, boasting about how much they enjoyed committing the murder. One note in particular, released by the press, simply read, "Hello editor, it's me, Ann Heron's killer." Sadly, Peter was also to be widowed once again, as Frida died of cancer in 2000. November 9th, 2005. It's now been over 15 years since Ann Heron's unexplained murder. 70-year-old Peter Heron is eating breakfast at around 7 a.m, getting ready to go to Teesside to visit his family. There's a knock at the door. It's the police, and they've come to arrest Peter and charge him with the murder of Ann Heron. New advancements in DNA forensics gave the authorities reason to believe that Peter had murdered his wife, with a single speck of his DNA, related to sexual activity, taken from her body at the time of being discovered. Peter is remanded in police custody and court proceedings begin soon after. Ann's first husband, Ralph Cockburn, and her 3 children all attend the hearing. Despite this development, the Crown Prosecution Service eventually opted not to pursue any charges against Peter, and all charges were dropped on February 8, 2006 due to a lack of evidence linking Peter to the murders. This, however, didn't mean that Peter's name was cleared, as the court of public opinion rose up once more, and a vast number of people still believe Peter to be responsible for Ann's death. Peter began to criticise Durham Police in the moments after his arrest, conducting various interviews with the press and writing an open letter to the police chief Mike Barton asking, "When will I receive a public apology?" All had seemed lost in the hunt to find Ann's killer, and the case seemed destined to remain unsolved with no future developments. That was until 2 years later. In February 2008, the Northern Echo released an article with new information from a witness who claimed to be the last person to see Ann alive. The anonymous man claimed that he spoke to the police in 1990, though this information only became public knowledge 18 years later. He claimed that he spotted Ann around 4:15 the day of her murder, less than an hour before she was killed, but in somewhat unusual circumstances. The man, who was driving a HGV lorry with a workmate in the passenger seat, claimed that he was passing by Aeolian House heading towards Middleton St George when he saw Ann driving towards him in a blue car, quite possibly the same blue car seen speeding away from the house moments after the murder. Ann was indicating to turn into the house, and as he passed her car, the man flashed his lights at her, to which he claimed Ann waved back at him. Looking down from his driver's seat, the man claimed that Ann wasn't alone in the car, and that there were in fact 2 other men with her, one in the passenger seat with his hands on the dashboard, and the other in the back. The man also claimed that on the parcel shelf of the car was a distinctive object, which he believed to be a trademark item carried by a man well known in Darlington's nightclub scene. The object in question has never been explained, but the witness claimed that he was adamant it was Ann, and that he was 100% certain. This news changed everything, as it now opened up more possibilities in the case. A further 7 years later, in August 2015, an explosive new development would emerge. A retired shop worker, known only as Sylvia, reports to the media that she came forward to the police in 2010 with shocking new evidence. Sylvia claimed that, whilst working in a card shop in Newton Aycliffe, located roughly 11 miles from Middleton St George, between late 1992 to early 1993, a man came into the shop and confessed to the murder of Ann. She reports how the man went into the back of the shop to talk to the manageress about a possible order. After about 10 minutes, the man emerged from the back of the shop, gave a smirk to Sylvia and left. The manageress then emerged soon after, physically shaken, telling Sylvia how he had just confessed to killing Ann Heron 3 years prior, but that he would never be caught as he was soon moving to Australia. The manageress didn't know why he opened up to her, but reports suggest that the manageress did look like Ann somewhat, which may have prompted him to speak about her. Sylvia claims that she didn't initially go to the police to report the incident, as she thought the man was just joking around, but it was only years later in 2010 that Sylvia would learn about Ann's murder, and it would truly shock her. The description of the man also matched the other witness statements, describing the man leaving the Aeolian House in the blue car. Sylvia also claimed that Durham Police didn't interview her properly when she came forward with her development, although they have suggested that a detective did speak with her and the information was acted upon. Sylvia's boss, who hasn't been named, has sadly died since, so her accounts of what was said are unknown. So who was this man? And who was the man in the blue car leaving Aeolian House around the exact moment that Ann was killed? Could they be the same person? There are actually 2 very strong possibilities of who this man could be, and the theories linking one of these men to the killer only emerged in 2020, 30 years after the event. This is Christopher Halliwell. Christopher Halliwell lived and worked in various northern towns close to where the Herons lived. Halliwell had various jobs, such as a binman, a gravedigger, a driver and a builder, and was known to be a keen fisherman. In 1985, 5 years before Ann's murder, Halliwell served 3 years in Dartmoor prison for car theft and raiding isolated properties for antiques. Whilst serving his sentence, he is reported to have bragged to a cellmate that he had already killed a woman and made suggestions that he wanted to become a serial killer. Halliwell was released in 1987, yet this wasn't to be his last time behind bars. In 2011, he was arrested and convicted of the brutal murders of Becky Godden Edwards in 2003 and Sean O'Callaghan in 2011. So, how is Halliwell linked to the possible murder of Ann Heron? Well, as mentioned previously, Halliwell was an opportunist criminal who lived nearby to Middleton St George and was originally convicted of raiding isolated properties for antiques. Aeolian House fits that bill perfectly, being situated off a secluded road and a potential target for theft. But we know that nothing was stolen from the property and it was left undisturbed with no signs of a break-in, so this possibility doesn't hold up considerably well. He was, however, a keen fisherman, and approximately 6 miles southeast to the Heron's household is Darlington Anglers Club, a popular fishing venue in the area. Could it be that Halliwell spent his time on the hottest day of the year fishing nearby, noticed Anne sunbathing outdoors on his way home, and decided to begin his dream of becoming a notorious serial killer? He did fit the description of the man seen driving away from Aeolian House, being tanned with dark hair, although he would have only been around 26 to 27 at the time, rather than in his 30s as it was reported. Halliwell was also known to own a small library of books on forensic science when he was arrested for his future murders, so was fully aware of what he would need to do in order to cover his tracks. Anne's killing had virtually no forensic evidence to tie the murder to a specific individual, so the case is there that it would take someone well versed in criminal science to leave the scene with no breadcrumb trail. It has to be said that this is all speculation, and there is actually no direct evidence that links Halliwell to the murder of Anne, but it wouldn't be unreasonable to suggest that a serial killer from the wider area could have committed this act. The final suspect is possibly the most interesting of them all, and it could be that we never would have known about this one had it not been for the work of a lecturer from York, and now private death investigator, Jen Jarvie. In September 2018, Jen Jarvie approached Peter Heron and Durham Police with some new information that had never been pieced together by anyone previously. You see, in November 1990, a month after their reconstruction and appeal for Anne's murder, CrimeWatch opened their programme asking for witnesses to come forward to report the whereabouts of this man, Michael Benson. Michael Benson, originally from Leeds, had a long criminal history, including burglary, robbery with a carving knife against 3 people, and was eventually sentenced to life in prison in December 1972 for GBH with a shotgun. Benson managed to escape twice and has since been missing since 1989. He even got remarried that same year in Southampton under the name Michael Johnston, despite being a wanted man. Benson was described by the programme as being 40 years old, around 5'11", with 3 tattoos on each arm and a strong Yorkshire accent. Benson had left his wife in May that year and taken her car, a dark blue metallic Ford Orion, very similar to the shape and colour to what was seen leaving Aeolian House. The programme described Benson as potentially dangerous and that he shouldn't be approached, presumably based on his criminal history. On July 18th, 1990, 2 weeks before Anne's murder, 2 women were attacked on a footpath beside the River Wear in Durham City, 25 miles from Aeolian House, near Prebends Bridge. The man grabbed the women from behind and threatened them with violence. The women managed to escape after handing over £35 in cash, which he took before running off. Police issued a photo fit of the man, who was reported to be around 30 years old, 5'9" with a stocky build, dark brown brushback hair and a suntan complexion. Jarvie's theory is that Benson, on the run from the law and after abandoning his wife, decided to return to his base in Leeds using her car. He would then decide to go searching for potential female victims, starting with the 2 women near Prebends Bridge and eventually working his way to Anne. There are also 3 other unsolved murders committed around Yorkshire and Southampton between 1991 and 1998, which Benson could have potentially been involved with. Benson closely matches the description of the man seen driving the blue car away from Aeolian House, with the car itself also resembling the shape and colour which was described by witnesses. Both Durham Police and Hampshire Police, who were working on the Ann Heron and Michael Benson cases separately, never made the connection before. It was only when Jarvie brought this idea forward that Benson could be involved that the connections began to click. Benson was never recaptured by police, but was known to be on the electoral roll in Leeds in late 2005 and had died there in 2011. Could Benson have been Anne's killer, Jarvie certainly believes so, stating that Benson is a viable alternative who needs to be looked into. When you put together the circumstantial evidence, he's more of a person of interest than Peter ever was. Jen Jarvie is still working on the case with the support of Ann's Scottish family and still wants to talk to potential witnesses who may have any information regarding Ann's death and Michael Benson. It's now 30 years on since Ann Heron's tragic death, which stands as Durham Police's only unsolved murder since 1952. Over the course of the investigation, well over 100,000 man-hours were spent hunting Ann's killer, with it going down as one of the most expensive manhunts in UK history. Peter Heron eventually sold Aeolian House, which is now a kennel and cattery, though the current owners claim to sometimes feel a presence within the property that cannot be explained. New advancements in forensic technology may help us uncover more about Ann's death in the years to come, and perhaps there are more witnesses out there who have yet to come forward. But for now, the Beauty in the Bikini murder is still one of the largest unsolved murder mysteries in UK history. Thank you everyone for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I personally found this case really interesting and I can't believe that I'd never heard about it before. So I'd love to know what you guys think about it. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and make sure you subscribe for more content like this. And as always, if there's anything you want me to cover, please let me know in the description. Thank you.